Welcome back. The debate over impeaching Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasiewicz continues in Madison, and a deal may have been reached to fund American Family Field renovations. CBS 58's Emily Fannin and AJ Bayaport discuss that and more in tonight's Capitol Connection.
We're first going to start with the topic of impeachment, as even after two former state Supreme Court justices warned Assembly Speaker Robin Vos against the move, he says impeachment is still on the table when considering whether or not to remove state Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasiewicz. Now, going to this argument, we've talked many times before about whether Vos is really serious about this, but right now it appears he's keeping it on the table because at first, he said he wasn't going to act on impeachment based on decisions from the new liberal majority that makes on certain cases. But now he's saying, I want to wait and see how they rule on that specific redistricting lawsuit. So it appears like he's having, conflicting statements out there. But whether or not this still has legs is the big question right now.
No question, the Speaker has given conflicting statements on what exactly the red line, so to speak, is on whether he would consider pursuing impeachment. Where this ends up going, most likely, is rather than impeachment after this liberal-leaning court most likely ends up striking down the current maps, which do favor Republicans, is an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Speaker has alluded to that as well. We want the U.S. Supreme Court to ultimately have the final word on this. So the state Supreme Court will handle this case. It'll most likely rule against the current maps. Republican leadership, including the Speaker, will likely then appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court rather than pursue impeachment.
And should Assembly Republicans go forth with impeachment, it appears right now that the Senate lacks votes to convict. I spoke to Senator Strobel last week, and he said, I'm against it. I don't think it's a good move because he pointed out, which is very true, if Assembly Republicans do impeach, the governor is almost certain to appoint a replacement for Protasiewicz. So in an end, it could be somewhat of a lose-lose scenario. So that's something we're watching for. Now let's move on to a new rebranding effort at the UW, or I should say, no longer the UW system, the Universities of Wisconsin. Jay Rothman, who is president of the Universities of Wisconsin, told you, AJ, this week that he spent nearly $500,000, $480,000 on this rebranding effort that appears to be a little bit controversial among some Republicans he spoke to.
Yeah, the Senate chair of the Higher Education Committee, the Senate Committee on Universities, had said, I think that this is unfortunate that the Universities of Wisconsin would spend nearly $500,000 on what he called symbolism over substance, changing the name, changing the logo. The Assembly chair of the Colleges Committee, Dave Murphy, said, well, look, you're talking about 13 campuses, a really big overall budget. $500,000 is not that much to spend if it's well executed. So he's kind of keeping an open mind on this. So why would you do this? Why does the Universities of Wisconsin leadership think that this is a good use of nearly $500,000? They think UW system sounds bureaucratic, kind of stuffy. By being the Universities of Wisconsin, they can highlight some of these other campuses, so it's not just people thinking of Madison. Think of UW Milwaukee, think of UW Whitewater, UW Oshkosh, which is undergoing cuts right now, trying to boost enrollment across the entire series of universities. Their hope is by drawing more attention, ideally, to the other campuses, they'll be able to boost enrollment and graduates across the state, and then long term, you keep more kids in Wisconsin, they go to college here, they stay here and get jobs, and that's an organic way of addressing the workforce issue.
And our look-ahead topic this week is a vote on Tuesday on what appears to be a deal has been reached with a sweeping proposal to fund renovations at American Family Field, and in return, the Brewers would extend their lease till 2043. So here's the new funding breakdown. The total package would now cost $646 million. That is reduced from $700 million in the original bill. That means $411 million from the state, $135 million from the city of Milwaukee, Milwaukee County, and $100 million being pitched in from the Brewers. Now, there were some changes, and the key component here was after Democrats and Milwaukee leaders stressed that, hey, $200 million is a lot of money to be asking from the city and county of Milwaukee, specifically because they just got this lifeline of an ability to raise their sales tax, to get more shared revenue to spend on police, fire, EMS, other services, to avoid bankruptcy. So in a sense, it seemed that you know, Representative Rob Brooks, who co-authored this bill, heard those concerns, made those changes, and that's one of the key ones here. But AJ, a lot of the provisions, the amendments that were added to this bill, you reported on also earlier last week.
Zoom back real wide, because a lot of people watching are first and foremost going to say $600+ million. Why is $500 million coming from taxpayers and just $100 million from the Brewers? That is a valid question that even Representative Brooks acknowledges, but MLB leadership, team leadership have pushed back and said, Milwaukee is the smallest market in Major League Baseball, so there needed to be some sort of public contribution because the Brewers are not a money printing operation like the Yankees or the Dodgers are. So that's the reason why the taxpayers are having to foot so much to begin with. But how can we make this more favorable, especially to Milwaukee taxpayers if they specifically have to pay, as you mentioned? A ticket tax on non-brewer events may end up getting added in the Senate. There will be this group created to study the idea of taking some of the current parking lot space around AmFam Field, developing that into residential development, retail development. The reasoning being that ends up being taxable, and that property tax money goes into Milwaukee and Milwaukee County's accounts to help pay for what they're putting in up front. And the sales pitch to the Brewers is, hey, get in on this development. Why don't you guys operate some businesses, restaurants, shops, similar to what the Bucks do with the Deer District, and this becomes something that's profitable for the Brewers as well.
The governor, Milwaukee leaders, Democrats, Republicans appear to be, not all Democrats and Republicans, but seems like the votes are there. Governor was involved, so looks like this could cross the finish line very soon.
No question, this is the closest we've been to a full-on agreement.
All right, that will do it for this week. Thanks so much for joining us.